Hey BookTube, I'm back for part 2 of my mega book haul from the charity sale. If you haven't seen part 1 of my contemporary fiction section, I suggest you visit that one first, just to get some details about the circumstances surrounding this book haul and why I got so many books. They were just, to put it short, they were cheap, and there was an enormous section of books, like just ginormous section of books. So I had no self-control in that sense, and I went crazy and I bought a ton of books. So this is part 2, and this will be classics. So a lot of Penguin classics here. That makes the bulk of the selection here, but then I also got a big selection of books that are classics but not Penguin classics or Oxford classics, and there's some gems in there. So I'll be excited to show you what I find. We're going to start off right away because I don't know if I want this video to last a full 40 minutes like the last one did, and so I won't be reading anything off. I'll just be talking a little bit about it. We start off with a Penguin modern classic. This is Albert Camus' The Outsider, and this is a different translation of The Stranger. So this is typically translated as The Stranger. This translator here for Penguin, who is the translator here? Stuart Gilbert. So this is not the usual translation that people read the Stranger in. There's another version of that, if you know the white cover with like all the little lines kind of converging in on the title. That's a different translator. I don't know who that translator is, but that's the edition I've always come across, and I do have a hardcover of that edition. But this is a different edition. This is the Penguin Modern Classic edition from, when was this published? This translation was published in 1946. So soon after when this novel was written, which was 1941-ish. So it's a very slim thing, and it's my second translation of that novel. And then we move on to a bunch of Black Spine Penguin classics in all kinds of editions. We start off with Balzac here. This is The Lost Illusions. This is a French novel, a very thick thing too, actually. It's almost 700 pages in this mass market Penguin classic here, and with the black spine. This is one of their older designs. This is translated by Herbert J. Hunt, I just noticed something. This says Lost Illusions is the story of Lucien Chardin, the young provincial poet, making his ruthless way in Parisian society, and who appears later in A Harlot High and Low, which is interesting, because I was going to share with you that I found The Harlot High and Low by Balzac in this much more modern design Penguin classic. This is translated with an introduction by Rainer Heppenstall, and this is The Harlot High and Low, and this seems to be some kind of, this one seems to be an earlier version of this, or whatever. I know that Balzac is famous for his, was it a human comedy is what he called it, where he wrote a ton of novels and loosely connects them into this wider universe called the human comedy. And I guess that's the reference there, with a character in here appearing in this later novel. So here's two novels by Balzac here in Penguin Classics. And then we move on to Tolstoy. I might as well share both of my Tolstoys with you right away, because I found two collections, Penguin collections of his short stories. The first one here is Master and Man and Other Short Stories. This is translated by Paul Foote, and this has Master and Man, which is like the title story here. And then it's also got Father Surrogus, and then Haji Marat, and this was published in 1977. And it's basically novellas, because most of them here are fairly long, 50 pages at least for each, up to 100 pages. And I do have a previous translation of Haji Marat, a translation in that vintage collection translated by PVR and Volkansky. So this will be a second translation of that short story. And then I also have another volume. This is How Much Land Does a Man Need and Other Stories, also by Tolstoy. But this one is translated by Ronald Wilkins with an introduction by A.N. Wilson. A.N. Wilson. And these are actual short stories where they're like 15 to 20 to 30 pages long, while that previous volume just has 3 novellas in it. So 2 different Tolstoy volumes, and the only short work of his that I've read was The Death of Ivan Ilyich, which is interesting that none of these volumes actually has that short story in there, so which is actually like 50 pages or whatever. So it means that there's another volume that Penguin must do of Tolstoy that I don't have. Keeping with the Russians, we also have a Penguin classic of Crime and Punishment. I recently reread Crime and Punishment in the modern Penguin classic translation by David McDuff, I think is the translator name. And this is the older translation here by David Magerschak. And I've read David Magerschak's translation of Anna Karenina, which is in the Signet Classic line. It's their current translation of Anna Karenina, which I didn't find any problems with. I thought it was quite good, so I doubt that I'll find any problems with this. Other than the problem with the physical book is that the book itself is basically coming off the text block here. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, right there. So I'll have to be gentle with it. I would not have bought this if it weren't, 1, it's $1, and 2, the text block itself is actually readable. It's only the front and the back where the text is coming off. So I think what I need to do is apply some tape on each side, and then this thing will be readable. So that's Crime and Punishment. And then we whiplash into the ancient times, or medieval times. This is Earnhard and Noker the Stammerer, kinship here. 2 Lives of Charlemagne. And this is basically brand new here. Brand new. It doesn't look like it's been read at all or been scuffed or whatever. And it's translated by Lewis Thorpe, and who I believe does other translation for Penguin. But this is The Life of Charlemagne. These are 2 biographies making a fascinating contrast. Earnhard's, the main biographical source, is a brilliantly expressed memoir of a diplomat who spent 23 years in Charlemagne's service. Notker's is an anthology of monkish anecdotes who convey vividly the flavor of life in the Dark Ages. Notker's less apocryphal stories, Charlemagne is already halfway to his apotheosis in the epics of later Middle Ages. Because if you're not aware, Charlemagne is very much mythologized later in history. And I guess the 2 little volumes here done by Penguin is meant to contrast that. And then we move on to a Chinese classic. This is Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. This is translated by D.C. Lau, L.A.U. And this says it's the principal classic of the thought of Taoism. And I don't really know much more than that, other than it's short. And this translation came out in 1963, so a little Chinese classic there. And then we come to the Campaigns of Alexander by Arrian. This is one of our principal sources of Alexander the Great, even though this came out, this was written hundreds of years after Alexander the Great actually lived. This was written, I think, in 1st or 2nd AD, in around 100 AD, or shortly after that. And Alexander the Great was around 330s or 340s BC, so you can see there's quite a bit of a time difference there. This is a translation by Aubrey de Selincourt, and I already have the edition to have for Arrian's Campaigns of Alexander. It's hidden here behind these books. It's the landmark Arrian, where it's got It's oversized, it's got tons of maps, and it's a new translation, and it's the edition to have. It's got tons of footnotes everywhere on every page, I'm sure this volume has maps, but it doesn't have much, and it's got a critical apparatus, but I don't think it has much more than that. Yeah, we got 4 maps. We got 4 maps on these pages here, and the landmark Aryan has probably a map on every 10 pages to help ground you where you're at in the story, because Alexander the Great does a lot of traveling, so and you need that. But I got this for the translation, just to have many different translations and to compare and contrast, which I really like doing with translations. Which also explains my next purchases, this came in as a set, which explains it on the front here. This is Goethe's Faust Part 1 and Part 2. And these are basically brand new editions too. Like, they don't feel like they've been used at all. They're very shiny, and they don't feel like they've been battered or anything. A little bit of yellowing, but that's to be expected with these older Penguin classics. And this is translated with an introduction by Philip Wayne. And I have the Oxford series of Goethe's Faust Part 1 and 2, done by David Luke, and I've heard a lot of praise for that translation, but I still want to contrast it. And I actually have Faust Part 2 in one of these older editions, but I don't have Part 1. So this works as part of a replacement copy, Faust Part 2. I think it's the same translation because it's Penguin, but then I get Part 1 as well, which Part 1 is usually considered the better volume, because this one he wrote when he was earlier in life, and it was only later in life that he ended up actually writing Part 2. So even though they're usually put together like this, Part 1, Part 2, they're got very different feels to them, because the author was in very different stages of life when he was writing them. And then we go to Gustave Flaubert by his novel Salammbô, and I think it's a historical novel. Yeah, it says French historical novel. And this is translated with an introduction by A.J. Krell-Schemeyer. And I have the Penguin volume of his Sentimental Education, and I believe I have a Norton volume of his Madame Bovary, which is his most famous book. But I do want to try some of his other works, and this is another one. So some more French classics, which I was surprised to reflect a while back that I haven't actually read a whole lot of French classics, which is weird to say that after you've read all 7 volumes of Proust. But other than Proust, I think the other French classics that I've read are The Plague by Camus and Madame Bovary by Flaubert. I don't think I've read any other French classic other than that, so it's kind of weird. Like, I haven't read any Hugo, I haven't read any Stendhal or Balzac or Zola, even though I have many editions. Or, speaking of French authors, actually, I haven't even read any Voltaire. This is Zadig and Lingueux. I'm not French, so I'm not going to pronounce that. But this is, looks like 2 novellas, and this is translated by John Butt. B-U-T-T. Great last name. Yeah, looks like they're both written before Candide, and John Butt also does the Penguin Candide, which I don't think I have. I don't think I have the Penguin Candide. I do have a volume of Candide, but I don't think it's Penguin, but I could be wrong about that. And this translation came out in 1964, so these are works of Voltaire that I've not actually heard before, but, and nice cover there. I like that cover image. And then we come to a very good find, like one of my favorite finds. Not the find of the classics. I have probably 3 books in contention for that, and one of them is the clear winner, and we haven't seen any of them yet. Well, this is one of them. This is in contention. So this is The Pill Book by Sia Shonigan, this is The Pillow Book, and this is translated by Ivan Morris. And that's significant because if you don't follow my channel, I read in January the entire Norton translation by Dennis Washburn of The Tale of Genji, which is enormous. It's 1,300 pages. Actually, it's hidden behind there on my shelf. It's like 1,300 pages. It's enormous. It's got small text. So it took me a full month to read that book, which is impressive because usually it would take me longer than that. So I was kind of buried in the heart of medieval Japan for a while. And this is another one of those classics from around that time frame when The Tale of Genji was first written. Though I hear it's a very different kind of work. It's not at all like The Tale of Genji, where The Tale of Genji is very complex. It's very intelligent. This I think is very distinctly different. Though the two works, Tale of Genji and this novel, or this The Pillow Book, are usually contrasted, or seen as like the authors are seen as rivals in some sense. And also the author here, the translator here, Ivan Morris, is significant because, he is the author of The World of the Shining Prince, which was a book written in the 50s or 60s, just detailing the history of the time of The Tale of Genji, which I have not read it myself, but I would like to